Good evening. Welcome to another exciting episode of the All In Politics Network on the All In Politics platform. I'm your host, Walt the Damager, along with my co-host.
At Rob Cooper Jr. on Instagram, not Twitter. What's going on, family?
Oh man, it's a lot to talk about, a lot of ground to cover, man. Since the ending of the November 3rd elections, it seemed that we're traveling down this rabbit hole that's bringing out more and more with this corrupt individual that we have in office.
That's right. I mean, corruption is what we've seen over the last 4 years, and certainly, corruption is what Donald Trump is going to do as he goes out. He's going to go out there with a bang. I mean, you have everything from, um, you know, challenges to elections where even his own Attorney General Barr, said that there was no irregularities throughout the whole nation that he could find. Going to pardons now. We're going to see list of pardons come out. First and foremost, we're going to see him try to pardon his family from many of the corrupt crimes that they've done. He's going to, of course, pardon, and he's already started pardoning some of his crony friends. And ultimately, we're going to see him look to try to pardon himself, which is going to be extremely interesting to see if he can get away from that, because that really sets a precedent. And what I mean by that is now, the Democrats rule the executive branch. Now you're going to see, maybe the Republicans, if the Republicans have any guts, maybe put a pause on that and try to slow things down, because essentially what you do is once you give Donald Trump the option to pardon himself from any and all crimes, then what you're saying to Joe Biden, who's the president elect, who will be in power, is that he can go above the law and he could do whatever uh, he wants and not worry about ever being held accountable because he simply pardoned himself. So the topic of the show today is, what is the future of the Republican Party, right? They're kind of damned if they do, damned if they don't. So, do the Republicans, back Donald Trump, particularly with these pardons? Do they continue to back him with these fraudulent claims, with the election? Do they continue to run the risk of losing the Georgia, the Georgia January 5th runoff Senate elections? So it's a lot to talk about here, man, and you know, really seeing where they go and what moves they make can have an impact on the party, not only today but the future.
Yes, and I can tend to agree with that. The other thing is we can reflect to bring a lot of people up to speed that may be inept to the dealings of the Republican Party. As you know, the Republican Party was always coined as the party of morals, the party of upstanding things, very conservative, and things that they feel as though the upper working class want. So, with that being subjected to question now, as you stated, and I like to piggyback off of, we have an individual now that has seemed to have hijacked the party and has it now totally in disarray, is looking to disrupt and defund, another word that's coined phrase, the actual Republican Party. They don't look too good right now. The cohesiveness is definitely breaking apart. Um, Trump has definitely had the senators breaking ranks. Barr is totally disassociated with what's going on. McConnell, everybody that he had for his back is basically now up in arms for the way this president is acted. Uh, I don't know where they go from here. To tell you the truth, I think this may be the end of the actual Republican platform, unless they come up with something new or or galvanize a new moniker or base.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. I know, I kind of, from a high level standpoint, kind of, tapped in some of the things that we want to discuss. But I guess where do where do we start with this? You mentioned Barr, his the Justice Department really coming out saying that they couldn't find any wrongdoings with the election. That pretty much gave credibility to the claims of the now fired director of Homeland Security, who said the same thing. That also adds credibility to what all the Republican governors had mentioned. That they had no irregularities in their state, and all the governors in general stating that all the elections were run free and fairly. So where now do the Republicans go? And then, just kind of speaking of President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, they were on an interview with Jake Tapper on CNN. I believe it was last night. We're recording this on Friday, so that was Thursday night when they had their discussion with Jake Tapper on CNN, where he kind of flat out asked them about the Republicans, and Joe Biden responded and said, hey, he's had several other Republican senators, even though they're not acknowledging him as president-elect publicly, they have called him confidentially, and number one, offered their congratulations to him, and also say that they recognize him as the president elect, and they recognize, and I think from here on out, we should, and then particularly on this All In podcast, we will forevermore recognize Donald Trump as the outgoing impeached president, period. Because he's outgoing, he's leaving, and he has been impeached. And he's a one-term guy. So that's how we're gonna recognize him from here on out, as the outgoing impeached president.
Indeed. And the scary part about it is a lot of people have microwave uh, memory. And what I mean by microwave memory is it only lasts as long as the cycle of the news information that they receive. If you can recall, Rob, I mean, we've had this conversation well before the 2016 elections was even had. This guy already had a lot of excessive baggage even coming in to being a candidate. A lot of his background was already shady. A lot of his dealings was already shady, from the lands and the golf courses and stuff that he had over in Scotland and overseas, and to the dealings he dealt with Russia. A lot of these things wasn't properly vetted. And if we can recall, when they were going back and they were going through Obama and his tenure and his qualifications to get in there, the only thing that he come up with him was a birth certificate. But here you have an individual coming in with a plethora of problematic issues, ranging from money laundering to racketeering to threats to paying off porn stars and everything else like that. And he gets in office, and now they find out that this train is coming straight for the corridor. So with that being said, it's like it's a done deal. Like, he totally destroyed and discredited half of Congress that's in there now.
Right. I agree. I agree. And it's interesting, where we could see these crimes being pushed forward. We could really tell by the intensity of how he's trying to, challenge our free and fair election process, and overall just really challenging our democratic process. You're watching what's going on in these hearings that they had. Notice that these hearings are not taking place in court. They're either taking place in hotels. They're taking place in some state legislatures, but they're not making it to court because there's not a judge, and quite frankly, there's not really a lawyer in America that's willing to put their reputation or their certifications or credentials on the line to defend such nonsense. That's why you see, Rudy Giuliani, who is the lead attorney on this. Giuliani, for those who don't know, he's the former mayor of New York. Prior to that, about 30 years ago, he was actually a federal prosecutor. But again, I don't believe that this guy has even stepped foot in a courtroom probably in the last 30 years. So it's real interesting, and you can really tell. You can tell by his press conferences afterwards, and really just the mockery that he's making. on our democratic process and our democratic system. And we just put up on the screen one of his latest tweets. He said the Republican legislators let down America. I'm ashamed of them. They completely misled the president and me. All of us Republicans, let them know what we think of them. Now let's kind of go through that tweet right there, Walt, and you and I discussed offline. There's a lot in that tweet from Giuliani, and so the first piece I want to say is the first sentence in that tweet where he says, "The Republican legislators let down America. I'm ashamed of them. They completely misled the president and me." Now, what did he mean by that when he says they completely misled the president and me?
That's where we're going to have to do some definite deep search and investigative work because, as you know, he wasn't appointed as an attorney. He's a side attorney. So he wasn't given the affordability through the White House to be Donald Trump's counsel. So apparently they've been working in cahoots off scene and offline. So as the news is, dictating now as far as the pardons and the way that they were giving out pardon preferences based off the candidacy and him promising on the campaign that he'll give out pardons if this comes up now. Now we're really starting to see what was going on with the inner dealings of his network.
Right, right. And exactly. And because I know Giuliani's a fool and he's being made out to be that way, and I agree with that. But when we look at that, when he says they completely misled the president and me, what exactly did the Republicans mislead them on? Could there have been some promises there? When we're talking about these irregularities, let's take Georgia for instance, and we talked about it, and yes, I'm going there. Um, was the fix in? I'm just going to say it straight up. I'm going to ask the question straight up. Was the fix in? Did the Republicans, those Republican governors, did they promise to deliver these states? And when they talk about these Dominion machines, and how they flip votes, that's been a cry from many Democrats and many people on the left for years, saying that they always felt that these things were happening with the elections. What did the Republicans promise Donald Trump, and what exactly is Rudy Giuliani talking about? That's what I want to know.
Maybe it's he's secretly dry snitching, as some will call it on the street.
Right,
And
right,
like and
right,
like, and
right,
like you said, as far as voter suppression, we've always known that it was a suppression used, but we just couldn't pinpoint it. Now you have somebody that has hands-on account of what's going on behind the scenes, and I'm glad you brought that up. So the question at hand is if they knew anything. So now, if they're secretly telling on America that this is
hmm
what's been going on, and there's a divisive tactic that's used to suppress and divert voting, maybe we need to
hmm
start going and investigate those other states like Florida.
right,
Let's go in and look at Texas.
right,
Let's relook at Georgia, Michigan, and the whole onslaught of them. Because if you're saying it was done in those, why not just do the whole 50 state look over and comb and like go through it with a fine tooth comb to see if it was any other irregularities? See,
right,
they project, so they make it seem like it's the Democrats and give you the Democratic states. Well, let's look at the Republican states as well and see what we can find.
right, right. And let us be clear to the audience. We are just examining this one tree, and we believe that there's a lot to meet the eyes. I mean, this is just not no typical Twitter post or Facebook post. This guy put some serious, deep accusations in this tweet, or this could just simply be, as we have up on the screen here, the opening shot of the Republican Party versus Trumpism. Is this the first of what we can foresee over the next few months and maybe into years, the start of a civil war within the Republican Party?
And also, let's look at it. Could it be to be the formulation of a coup?
Mm,
Could it be
mm,
that they're driving him? Could it be that they're driving this president to suspend the Constitution? Could it be that
Hmm.
he can say
Well,
that he cannot uphold the decision, right? Even though we know legally it's not binding, but this guy is unhinged.
that's right. That's right. Well, let's look at it. So, let's say, let's talk about the coup, and this is, been highly reported in the mainstream media of what the Trump campaign, and quite frankly, the Trump administration has done and had their eyes set on all the way back to August. Let's go back to the slowing of the U.S. Postal Services. Let's go back to they began challenging elections in the courts before we even, the mail out ballots was even sent out there.
Exactly.
They made attempts to put the Green Party on in many states, knowing that they don't agree with what the Green Party stands for, but they wanted to do that to try to siphon off votes from Joe Biden. So they've been constantly in the court, several months before not only the votes were counted, but before even, the ballots even got into the hands of the American people. So we saw this, showing doubt in the free and fair elections and really taking an attack on democracy, which right now it appears, as you talk about this coup, I think we can safely call it a failed coup. But now that we saw that the coup failed from a national standpoint and taking over the government, could this shot thrown out by Rudy Giuliani could be okay? Well, let's step it down a little bit and let's continue these tactics, but maybe not against the United States government, but against the Republican Party. Let's hijack and run a coup on the Republican Party, take the power of that particular one of the two major parties, and then as when to position yourself to try it again to take over the federal government. I'm just
Right.
throwing some things out there.
To attack from within.
Correct.
That's how the art of war is replicated, right?
Correct.
All right, so let's take another step further. So here we have, since we're going back to the beginning stages of how the inception of this came about, Mr. Michael Flynn, an illegal foreign agent that was working in cahoots with the Trump administration that had foreign ties without disclosing any of his dealings properly. So here we have him dealing with Russia as well as an agent. And he was the one that actually indicate, well, he didn't indicate, he was the one that purportedly had told Trump that he should seize and, call for martial law and then overturn the elections. What is your take on that?
Well, it's something that you pretty much called. You called this a while ago when I think I'll use your terms for it. Not speaking for you, but use your terms for just for discussion. You said before, the elections go. You said, Rob, there ain't gonna be no elections.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, one of the ways that so this is before. I'm going back maybe a year ago. We had these discussions, and we had it on
Mm-hmm.
this very podcast where we didn't believe that elections are going on, and really, we can't really say that the elections actually really occurred until the electorates meet and make the final decisions and votes. I believe on December the 14th. I believe is the date. So to your point, we're not necessarily out of the woods when it comes to that. But what Michael Flynn is saying, and again, this guy is a former general. Um, this guy was pardoned for crime, so I guess he feels like you said unhinged. He can say whatever he wants without feeling getting any repercussions, and
Right.
pretty much, quite frankly, he's out of control. So these guys are literally they've taken hijacking the government and really trying to pull off a coup right there in mainstream, right there in public, unafraid of anything. I mean, if this doesn't have all the looks of what went down during the Cold War, um, and it should cause some alarms to folks, I don't know what will.
Well, the thing about it, Rob, you got to remember the time from then and now is back then they had what you would call now true patriots. You back then you had people, the whistleblowers that they so-called call them, were people that was really bonded to the U.S. Constitution
Mhm.
and the sovereignty of the nation. Now you have to-doers and you have willing sycophants out here that are willing to give their life and their limbs over false realities and to dictatorship. So they're willing to fall on the sword for this guy. They know what they're doing is wrong. There's no more morals or principles. It's all about the cause. So these people that's in these places that Trump is putting into power, they've all been promised these positions from years beyond. They've been groomed. They've been put through a machine, just like a hot dog making machine. They pump all the stuff into a hot dog, they case it up, and there you have it. You got different brands and different flavors, but the outcome is different once that consumer takes a bite into it. And that's the harsh reality that we're facing now. We're finally seeing the fruits of criminality that's been culminated over years, and it's come to the right time and the right point in history that they can make these moves.
This podcast was brought to you by the All In Network. Don't forget to head over to allinnetwork.net. That's allinnetwork.net to find all of your podcasts, including the All In podcast, which is the original podcast by my son and one of the co-founders of this All In network, Elijah Cooper, along with Mike Bassett. Head over there. They had some exciting new content on, particularly on night. You know, if you're a fantasy football player or fantasy sports player, get over there now. That's their latest podcast. If you want to know who to put in your lineups, who to start, who to sit, All In Networks podcast is the where you want to go. And also, not only do we want to send you over to the allinnetwork.net, but we also have a YouTube channel, which you are watching this on this now. And you know, when you head over to YouTube and you put that search in on the All In Network, what will come up is All In Politics as well as the All In Network Sports Show. But Walt, when they get there, just don't listen to these contents. Of course, we want you to listen to it and enjoy it. But what do we need them to do, Walt?
We need you to scramble with your handle and maybe go ahead and call on Randall. Grab that device, whatever you're using at the time, jump up and down to a 360, slam on it, and smash the subscribe button.
Smash that subscribe button. Again, that's on YouTube. Put that search in for the All In Network, and you find our content, the All In Politics Show, as well as the All In Network Sports Show. But also, man, you know, another thing too, you guys heard when you heard our intro into the show, that intro, those beats are done courtesy of my nephew, Anthony Ant-Man Shelton, making those beats for us. So I hope you enjoy that and also enjoy this show. But Walt, as we speaking on, you know, some of the criminality that's going on right now in the federal government. You know, I think you just shot me something, you know, where Trump is now doing really all of Putin's work for him right now. He has less than 50 days left. You see that he's pulled out of the troops, you know, out of Somalia. That news just came up today. 700 troops will be pulled out of Somalia. So, what do you think is happening right now? What is you know, what is this guy doing? Is he you know, I'm almost scared to ask you because I already know your answer. But for the people's sake, you know, what is your thoughts about, you know, him pulling out of troops here and also pulling out the troops that was announced a few weeks ago, pulling out troops out of Afghanistan?
There is definitely a geographical uh, occupation that's taking place. And in order for the trajectory of a so-called third war is being implemented, Putin has his sights on different great geographical locations around the world, and Africa being one of the main spots known for its resources and capabilities to reach other areas, continents, and regions from that particular area. Between Russia and China, but it seems like China has a semi grip on an African continent, but it seems like Putin is trying to, up his game and up his strategy and his global advancements. Um, but yeah, it's a sick state of affairs right now, man. Because like I said, as you see it, it's like nothing in the 4 years was ever done to Putin and his diabolical schemes to take over things. The Ukraine situation was never handled properly. You have these troops that was paid for hire to killed by Taliban and Afghan soldiers and things of that nature. None of these things was never addressed by the
Right.
Trump administration.
That's right.
Now, I'm gonna make this point for our viewers. We come on here each week, bi-weekly, or when we address, we're for the cause of the people. It's not about the political affiliations, because at the end of the day, we all breathe, sleep, eat, dress, and bleed the same. It's about principles,
We lost you all.
morals, and compass. That's what we. And can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me now? Okay. So that's what
Yes,
we
yes, sir.
encompass. That's what we encompass as a people. Is even though the affiliation is Democrat and Republican, we report on all facets of the news. So we just don't pick on one particular party if we're affiliated with it or not. We like to have a broader view and give the voice to the voiceless.
I'm glad when we talk about that, about Trump pulling out these troops out of, these foreign wars and things like that, and trying to pull back America. In fairness to Trump, he that was actually one of his, and people forget that was one of his campaign promises back in 2016, particularly when he was running in the Republican primary, because he was hammering, Jeb Bush. Those who don't know, Jeb Bush is George W. Bush's brother. He was hammering Ted Cruz and some of the other war hawkish Republicans, about that, in their support of the war in Iraq. Yeah, I think it was Iraq at that time, or and as well as Afghanistan. But my question to Trump, when you got in there, you pretty much stopped. You didn't fulfill those promises. Okay, so now what it looks like now, you're doing it out of sour grapes, and you're really trying to now destabilize, those areas and cause more friction and cause more damage to our national security. And I love how you put it. I don't want us to come across like we're war hawkish guys, because we're not. I mean, we are all for bringing our troops home. Let that be clear. But we it needs to be done with a well thought out exit plan, not because you lost in a landslide, you mad, and now you want to take your balls and go home, and leave everybody else hanging, so to speak. So these are type of things. Again, these are pieces that shows how corrupt this guy is. To your point, what kind of dealings did he have with Putin? Did Putin offer him, some relief on his debt that he owes Putin? If he pulled back here and there, did he? It's definitely clear that he pretty much set, Russia and China up lovely. Um, to stand up against the United States under a President Biden administration.
Right. Well, let's see how it fares with that Trump Moscow deal.
That's
Let's
right.
see.
That's right.
Let's see how it goes, and then let's see how it goes with Trump getting all these patents and trademarks placed over there in China. So there's definitely some hand paying the piper over in that region. But I also wanted to bring in a reference when we were talking about the um, the situation with Russia and Trump. Trump has a lot of debt to pay back to that guy. It is only a matter of time. We might not find out this year, next year, or a couple of years from now, but we'll find out what his dealings actually were with a foreign agent.
Well, that's right. Well, man, another great show, another great power half hour. Dealing with politics here on the All In Politics platform and the All In Politics network. Again, man, this is we got to watch this, and I think this is the first of many discussions of following and tracking where the Republican Party is going to go. So, with that said, take us home, Walt the Damager.
Well, like it's always said, if you don't know, now you know. We always like to be an informative part of the community. We like to give out information where it's needed. to get our people educated and bring special guests and individuals that can give knowledge of whether health, wealth, or self, just for the upliftment of the mind, upliftment of the body and soul. Because if nobody else can help you, we want to be that portion of the pillar of the neighborhood or the community to help you get you what you need. So again, with that being said, it was a great episode. We hope to see you next week and the weeks to follow. God willing, we love you. Stay up and God bless.
Peace.
Peace.